Hey BookTube, it's Peg at the History Shelf. I have been tagged in a tag that is now going viral that began with Matthew at Mayberry Book Club. It was a brilliant idea, Matthew. And then Samuel Darham recently tagged me to go head to head with Steve Donahue to see which books of mine he may not have read. And I picked 8. There were others I could have picked, but I'm hoping to beat Samuel's record. I think he has the highest count right now of 3 books that Steve has not read. I'm only going with 8. I guess there were really no set rules, but anyway, I want to thank Matthew for a great tag idea. This is a lot of fun. I'm enjoying watching all of the videos and Steve's responses to them. Okay, so mine are going to be interesting in that I think my challenge is a bit harder because I primarily read nonfiction, history, and biography, and we all know that Steve really favors those categories in his reading. So the majority of my interests are very similar to Steve's in many ways. So having said that, I'm guessing that he probably has read many of these. But either way, it's going to be a joy just to hear his thoughts. I'd love to hear his take on these books. So it's kind of like a freebie for me, you know. So what if he's read them? I get to hear Steve Donahue's thoughts on them. So that's kind of cool. All right. I'm gonna go with my stumper first. I don't know if it's a stumper. How about this one? We're going to talk about The Agony of the Russian Idea by Tim McDaniel. Now, I think it's a rather arcane title. Not many people are aware of it. It's just, you know, it's a nice nerdy text. It was from Princeton Press. I've had this copy forever. If you try to find it online, I think it's last time I looked to see if this was, you know, even a popular read anymore. I think it's been like, you know, like $50 used or something like that. It's hard to find it. But yeah, it takes a look at just the many different aspects of let's see, perspectives and values of the rulers and elites, all the way down from the Russian autocracy to the peasants, and the widespread loyalty to the Russian idea. Of course, again, you know, I think you guys have heard me say this before. I'm really into my Russian studies, and it might be one of the things well, 3 things that I might master in Russian history would be one of them. Something along those lines. I'm just fascinated by Russia and Soviet Union and communism and just how all that went south from the get-go. Yeah, so Agony of the Russian Idea, Tim McDaniel. Should I tell you the year it was written? So maybe 1996. I'm sure he's read this, but anyway. Okay, next book, you guys. This I think he's read, because I just think Steve's that kind of guy. This is The Pursuit of the Millennium by Norman Cohn. Revised and expanded edition. You can see this is an old edition. I had to buy it used. It's nice and yellowed. You can't really tell from this light. This is about revolutionary millenarians. Try to say that 5 times fast. Millenarians and mystical anarchists of the Middle Ages. Established as a classic virtually upon its publication, this book tells the fascinating story of revolutionary and anarchic sects and movements in medieval Europe. Sects with a T, not sex. Sects. At its core is a new and vital interpretation of historical forces that compels a reconsideration of the European past. Professor Cohn shows how the desire of the poor to improve the material condition of their lives became transfused between the 12th and 16th century with prophecies of a prodigious final struggle between the hosts of Christ and Antichrist, from which another paradise or kingdom of the saints was to emerge. Using modern sociological and psychological concepts, the author analyzes the significance of these medieval strivings And he suggests also how these phenomena relate to the revolutionary movements of our own time. So, pretty fascinating. It's been a while. I had to read the back because there's no way I could just give you a rundown, but pretty cool stuff, man. It's a very yellowed old copy. All right, The Pursuit of the Millennium, Norman Cohn. Bring it. Okay, next one. Icarus Fallen, The Search for Meaning in an Uncertain World by Chantal Delsol. And this was printed by ISI Books. And this was printed 2003 in ISI's Intercollegiate Studies Institute. Let's see. I guess it's kind of a work of social, I guess I describe it as like a little bit philosophical, sociological. It's a perceptive account of modern man's predicament. A contemporary Western man, says prominent French political philosopher Chantal Delsol, is like the mythical figure Icarus, fallen back to Earth after flying too close to the sun. In this case, the sun of utopian ideology. The ideas he once held so dear, inevitable progress, the possibility of limitless social and self-transformation, are no longer believable, and he has lost the anchor of religious tradition. This engrossing book establishes Delsol as one of the world's most insightful social and cultural writers. Well, that's always up to the reader to decide. But I thought it was thought-provoking in many ways, and I just enjoy reading political philosophy from time to time and different people's take on it. Sorry for the glare. Icarus Fallen by Chantal Delsol. There you go. Okay, now this one is kind of an easy one, you know, but, you know, and a history fan, Civil War fan, memoir fan, right? So here we go. I'm sure you've read this, Steve, but maybe you haven't. This is the personal memoirs of Julia Dent Grant. And I love how they put it in parentheses, Mrs. Ulysses Grant. Because otherwise we wouldn't know who she is, right? I mean, she's known by who she was married to. But anyway, these are her memoirs, and how delightful. You know, Ulysses Grant and Julia Dent, they had quite the love story. And I love a good love story. And these two were really committed to each other. I mean, a lot of people are or were, but it has been kind of proven, well, not proven, but a lot of biographers about Grant have said that, you know, one of the reasons why he drank when he was stationed way out west and caused him to leave the military, this was before the Civil War, was that he was so achingly lonely for her. And there might have been a physical component as well, that, you know, they had a passionate relationship. He really loved her. She loved him. And, you know, they have a whole brood of kids to prove it. But, you know, he just fell for her. And what was interesting is she wasn't considered like what you would consider like a traditional beauty or whatever. I just love that he fell in love with her as a person. I mean, she had an unfortunate, something she was always very self-conscious about. She had like not a lazy eye, but one of her eyes was just kind of crossed or a little off center, and she would always turn her head to one side in photographs because she didn't want that eye to be seen, you know. But he didn't see any of that. He just saw her soul. He saw the beautiful person that he came to know and love, and it's just so I loved having. This is just a personal note, I know, for the purposes of this video, but I just wanted to say something about it because it's a great love story and personal memoirs of Julia Dent Grant. So, Steve, have you read it? And what'd you think? If you did. Okay, how many have I done so far? I've done 4. Okay, we got 4 more. 3 of them are pretty heavy, topic-wise. Let's go with... All right, this one's kind of dry, nerdy reading. It's from Cambridge Press. This is The Moral Disarmament of France, Education, Pacifism, and Patriotism, 1914 to 1940, and by Mona Siegel. I like really obscure, well, I think it's obscure, but Steve will let me know if it's not so obscure, but I like really just books that get in the weeds of certain topics, and this one makes an interesting case um, that, oh, right, okay, so they're saying here that, this is not how I would describe it, but they're saying that there were pacifist school teachers in France throughout the interwar decades um, who cultivated anti-patriotism and facilitated the ultimate defeat of 1940. So I guess it's in the aftermath of World War I that you just saw, well, it wasn't just France, but a lot of the countries just said no more war, we're never doing this again, and, you know, beat our swords into plowshares and all this, and one can rightly understand that position. Just the mass scale slaughter that happened, one can understand that. But then, so then this sense of just teaching pacifism in the face of growing evil, and let's face it, I mean, Hitler and the Nazis were evil, and only a few people were willing to understand that, you know, you can't just be peaceful in the face of someone who wants to do you harm. That's just not going to work out to your benefit. So basically, they're saying that they morally disarmed, and that's why France was just run over so quickly in 1940. So it's an interesting premise, and it's a fascinating book. So this is The Moral Disarmament of France by Mona Siegel. Okay, let's see here. This ties in pretty well, talking about Nazis. This one is this is a fairly recent new book. And I haven't gotten the courage up to read it yet because it's going to be really dark. But I want to read it because I believe the premise to be true. But I need to read it and see if that is the case. This is called Believe and Destroy: Intellectuals and the SS War Machine by Christian Ingrao. This is by Polity Press. This came out in first English, because this was it's translated. It was first published in France, but in French, the language, in 2010, and then the first English edition was in 2013. And I listened to a podcast on the New Military or New History Books podcast network, and so I actually listened to an interview with this author, and that's what made me decide to hunt this book down and find it. So the premise on this book is the young, clever, and cultivated, they were barely in their 30s when Adolf Hitler came to power. Their university studies in law, economics, linguistics, philosophy, and history marked them out for brilliant careers. They chose to join the repressive bodies of the Third Reich, especially the Security Service and the Nazi Party's elite protection unit, the SS. They planned the extermination of 20 million individuals of allegedly inferior races. Most of the 80 became members of the paramilitary death squads known as the Einsatzgruppen and participated in the slaughter of over 1 million people. This book basically is a study of these 80 people, right? That were like the lead intellectuals of the society, people who should have brought good to their societies with their learnedness. How they could be so brilliant, so educated, but yet be so debased and deranged to do what they did. And so I think it's always good to keep in mind that being highly educated and overly intellectual is not always the what it's made out to be. I mean, I really truly believe that, you know, people have in their hearts either darkness or light, and in this case, your education didn't do a damn thing to help anyone, and you were, you know, you just look. I mean, look, this picture says it all. This guy could have been a professor, and has no compunction about just shooting this man in the back of the head. So, it's going to be a dark read. But I'm curious to know, Steve, if you have heard of this book or if you have read it, Believe and Destroy Intellectuals in the SS War Machine. Yeah, now I want to bump this up to the top of my TBR. Okay, so there's that. And we have 2 more books left, you guys. Okay, we'll go on a little lighter note. This is a memoir, an autobiography of sorts. I have not read it yet, but I plan on it very soon. This is Fault Lines by David Price Jones. I've enjoyed a lot of David Price Jones' writing. I enjoyed his book from, oh gosh, it's probably close to 20 years ago now, The Closed Circle, his study of, I guess you'd call it the study of like Arab society, Arab culture, Arab politics, how there's just a different set of values that go with, like with tribal affiliations and things like that. But David Price Jones, he's had a very long and esteemed writing career, but yet at the same time, he has known a lot of different people, and he's traveled a lot, and his life just sounds so dang interesting. He was born in 1936. And he's the son of the Times Literary Supplement writer and editor Alan Price Jones. And yeah, it's his memoir. And he basically talks about all the people he's met, how, where he traveled, Europe, America, Middle East. So he's met Somerset Maugham, Svetlana Stalin. He met her. Yeah, so there's just a lot of really cool stuff going on here, and I love a good memoir, and I like reading about writers and their lives and what they've done, and it's kind of neat. Anyway, so this is Fault Lines by David Price Jones. This was put out by Criterion Books in 2015, and I'm pretty sure Steve's read this one, but I'd like to know your thoughts on that. Okay, so this last one, I was gonna do this book, but I think it's cheating because it's kind of more of a textbook. But I'm just gonna throw it up here just for Chinese Civilization, a source book, huh? It's basically a textbook of sorts, but it kind of gives you like primary source material for political items, poems, religion and cosmology. Documents concerning government, Confucianism, tales and fiction, family, kinship, and gender. So, I mean, it is a source book. So I'm not going to count that one, but I wanted to show you. So this one is interesting. I don't know if Steve has read this one, but the writer was very prescient. And her name is Carol M. Swain. And she wrote The New White Nationalism in America, Its Challenge to Integration. Now, she wrote this book back in 2002 and had studied and interviewed people for years before that. So we're talking 20 years ago or more. And now, mind you, this was put out in 2002, and then in the flyleaf here it says, over the past 10 years, a new white nationalist movement has gained strength in America, bringing with it the potential to disrupt already fragile race relations. Eschewing violence, this movement seeks to expand its influence mainly through argument and persuasion directed at its target audience of white Americans aggrieved over racial double standards, race-based affirmative action policies, high black on white crime rates, and liberal immigration policies. The movement has also been energized, Swain contends, by minority advocacy of multiculturalism. Due to its emphasis on group self-determination, multiculturalism has provided white nationalists with justification for advocating a parallel form of white solidarity. In addition, as Swain illustrates, technological advances such as the internet have made it easier than ever before for white nationalists to reach a more mainstream audience. Swain's study is intended as a wake-up call to all Americans who cherish the civil rights era vision of an integrated America, a common humanity, and equality before God and the law. She was a visionary with her studies, and this study basically told us what was coming. And she saw it too with the internet, and you're right, it made it more mainstream. It brought it to the mainstream uh, to an audience. So, I mean, just look around you at the current political atmosphere. This was an amazing book. The New White Nationalism in America. Carol M. Swain. 2002. Was able to find a remainder or an old library copy for used. But so, Steve, have you read this one? Okay, I think that's it. I think that's all 8. It was a 20-minute video. But these were quite a few. Oh, I do have just a quick favor to ask of Steve. Martine wanted me to try to stump you with her idea from a book she read when she was a young girl and she loved it, and it was sci-fi. And I said, well, I can guarantee you that he has probably read it. But the author is Douglas Hill, and it was the now I'm spacing on it. Douglas Hill, and it was the Kyle Randor series. Does that ring a bell to you at all, Steve? You know, hang on a second, because I'm looking this up right now. It's like the Warlord, the Last Warlord. Here we go. Okay, Galactic Warlord by Douglas Arthur Hill. Have you read that one? I guess they were made back in the day, and I guess it's part of the Last Legionary series. There we go. That's it. She just wanted to know if you've read that one, and if you know how to get a copy. But I'm trying to find a copy for Christmas. So anyway, okay. So there you guys have it. I hope I acquitted myself well, Steve. Please let me know. I look forward to your video addressing my books, which again are, we'll just do this real quick, Fault Lines, David Price Jones. Icarus Fallen, The Search for Meaning in an Uncertain World by Chantal Delsol. The Pursuit of the Millennium by Norman Cohn. Tim McDaniel's The Agony of the Russian Idea. The Personal Memoirs of Julia Dent Grant. The Moral Disarmament of France by Mona Siegel. Believe and Destroy, Intellectuals in the SS War Machine by Christian Ingrao. And Carol M. Swain's The New White Nationalism in America. All right, so I'm eager to see how I did. Be gentle. Okay, anyway, you guys, I don't know, I'm out of breath, I'm nervous. I've just laid down my cards. I got to see what's happening, and I got to wait. Now I got to wait for him to get back to me on this. But anyway, guys, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll talk to you soon, BookTube. See ya. Bye.